So today, everybody, we're going to be doing a little bit of what I'm calling first book fantasy. So first book fantasy is not really an original idea. Many YouTubers have done it before, but I just all of a sudden realised, I've read 3 books that are all the first books of fantasy series. So I might as well review them all at the same time, and then maybe let you know at the end which one of them is the series I'd most like to continue. The 3 books I'm going to be talking about are Jade City, The Devils, and Grace of Kings. And before you come at me, as is your right, I do understand that The Devils by Joe Abercrombie it was just released. Then there are no other books. So yes, it is the first book. And I do know from interviews that he said he is going to write more. So technically, it is the first book. And technically, I can still, at the end, say what series I would rather continue, even if there aren't any more books to continue. So, yeah. But basically, I read Jade City, then I read The Devils, and all of a sudden I was a bit like, I've read a couple of first books in potential series. So then I was like, I'll read one more and then talk about it and blah, blah, blah. And also, I want to apologise for no videos recently. Life has just been absolutely mental. It's just, I've had no time. I've had time for reading, but no time for filming whatsoever. And yeah, so sorry there's not been a video for, I think we're on like 3 weeks. Normally I'm a video a week, but I think we're on like 3 weeks now without a video, something like that. Maybe it's 2, but either way, it feels like an age. All I can say is life. Life gets busy. Fingers crossed, after a couple of weeks, I think I'm going to be on like a much more sensible kind of work routine, which means I'm going to have loads more time for not only reading, but also filming. So expect, hopefully, the videos to ramp up a lot in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, let's kick things off with Jade City. Jade City is set in Janloon, a city that is pretty much based upon mid-20th century Hong Kong. The novel follows the Kaul family of the No Peak clan, and that brings me to my first point, which is I do apologise if I'm mispronouncing any of these names. In this fantasy world, we have these kind of gangs and these people who can wield this sort of jade substance, and this jade substance allows people great power. However, the jade is very much like a drug, and if you don't take it, you have a come down. The sort of side effects of using it and trying to come off of it are quite vast for the people involved, but those who are able to wield it and control it and use it have great power. I want you to imagine, when thinking about this novel, like The Godfather, if it was set in Hong Kong with a little bit of fantasy thrown in there as well. And that's this novel, because it's all run by gangs, and jade is monitored and distributed and run by gangs, and then I got along with other things that these gangs do. It's organised crime, and it is a story about sort of 2 families, but in this novel we just focus on the No Peak clan and their sort of rivalry with this kind of mounting gang. There's quite a lot of characters in this novel, but we mainly focus and get a real kind of insight into 3. We have Kaul, who is the sort of disciplined pillar of the No Peak clan. Then we have Hilo, who is a bit of a loose cannon. He's got balls. He just, if there's a fight and he's ready to go for it, he will go for it. He has no fear, and he wants to kind of rule through fear. And and him and his older brother, who is the sort of leader of the clan, they clash a little bit throughout. And then we have Shay, who is the sister of the 2 brothers, and she left to go be, I can't remember now, it's so long ago. She left to work, not as a lawyer, that would feel a bit too predictable. I think it was in business, went to business school. She went to university on a different island, and obviously she grew up with Jade, wearing jade, being a member of the clan, and she sort of gave it all up because she could see what it was doing. But she's come back. She's come back to the family, and it's all about like her plot thread is pretty much like kind of her being reintroduced to the family, her trying to resist wanting to become a part of the family business, and her slowly being drawn back in. Everything in this novel is a trope you have seen 1,000 times before, and it pretty much, note for note follows the classic gangster films of, ones that I watched when I was younger. The first one that I was introduced to, like, you got your Goodfellas and you've got your Godfather Part 1, Part 2. Yeah. So what did I like and what didn't I like? What I liked. So I really like the kind of intricate world building. I thought the decision to sort of blend this kind of like crime family drama with fantasy, for the most part, was handled decently. And just the world building in itself sort of focusing in on this sort of like one knit family, and I just know that we're just going to get, it's going to expand and expand and expand in the other novels. And I think as far as first novels go, it does a really good job of setting up the world. Next thing I kind of liked is, even though I felt like it could have gone a little bit deeper, I do like the dynamics between the family members. It feels a little bit YA at times. I felt like it could have gone a little bit deeper, a little bit richer, but maybe that's just because I'm used to reading other sort of stuff. If you just read fantasy, I think you would think this is really sort of like rich and complex within the character dynamics, and they are there, and it is exploring those, and I'm really glad the novel does that. I really enjoyed the themes that this novel is exploring. We've got like loyalty, honour, and power, and I think how it explores these through each character and their journey is done really smartly, really clearly, but with twists and turns along the way. So yeah, decent. Next thing I liked was the action sequences. I thought that the action was handled really well throughout. It's not jam-packed with it, but when it does happen, I was never sort of confused as to what was happening and who was where and how the sort of like the scene and the fight was building. Yeah, I thought it was just written really nicely. And the final thing I really liked, and I suppose this does sort of tie in with world building that I was talking about earlier, but the sort of cultural elements that are sort of woven into this novel are really refreshing as well. They take something that could have just been like, you know, like a fantasy gangster, but then throws in this sort of this heritage and this culture as well that kind of just really layers the novel. I can see and understand why people are such big fans of this book and this series, because even though when I'm reading it, I felt like every sort of plot thread or the narrative itself I've read 100 times before, there was enough sort of like, I was kind of such a different twist on it that, yeah, it felt new, it felt refreshing. What didn't I like? First thing I didn't like is the pacing at times can be a little sluggish. It's nothing major, but yeah, just a few moments where I was a bit like, come on, let's get going. The next thing I really, really didn't like is I thought Jade was a bit naff. It just felt lazy. Just felt really, really lazy to be like, and there's this jade substance and it's like a drug and you can, I don't know. I don't think the jade part of this feels very sort of just, oh, there's a thing that they take and it gives them power. I don't know. There's not like a heritage. I just felt like the sort of the fantasy elements of this novel are clear. Like they are clear and you get a kind of understanding of Jade and what it does. But I don't know. I just found it a bit naff. Really naff. And seeming as like that's what the novel's named after, and that's like the central hook, I'm a bit worried for continuing this because I do find that aspect about it like really rubbish. So we'll see. And my final dislike is these secondary characters could have been fleshed out a lot more. This is quite a large book, and yeah, I just felt like characters who I was really into outside of the immediate family, the immediate three, are given enough time. Like you wouldn't at any point be like, oh, that was, you know, they would literally just mention and nothing else. Like they are given a hint of depth, but I don't know, for my personal tastes, I would have liked so much more with all of them considering the length of the book. So yeah, that's my final dislike. So there you go, that's my thoughts and feelings on Jade City. Overall, I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed it. Even though I've got a few negatives that definitely bring it down, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good, and very good in my rating system equals a 3.5 stars out of 5. So yeah, decent. Really glad I read it. Next up, we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. So anyone who follows this channel will know I am a big fan of Joe Abercrombie. Last year, like sort of during a similar sort of time, like summertime, I decided to read everything in the First World series of books. That's all the standalones, that's the first trilogy, the second trilogy. It was like 10 books in total, including a book of short stories. And I just fell in love with Joe Abercrombie's writing. So if he releases a book from now on, I'm reading it day one. That's pretty much how it's going to go for the rest of my life because, yeah, I just love his stuff. And in this novel, The Devils is kind of back to basics. It's a real simple sort of ragtag group of people who are going on an adventure, going on a quest, and it's about us learning about this world, learning about these characters, hanging out with these characters and experiencing everything in between. And there are twists, there are turns all along the way. It's full of excitement, it's full of adventure, it's really, really funny. It's just everything Joe Abercrombie does well. in a novel. The novel is set in a world that's kind of reminiscent of medieval Europe, and in essence, the church, the Pope, wants to, and the Pope in this novel is like a 10-year-old, 8-year-old girl, very, very young, and in this world that is reminiscent of our world, but a little bit different, women can be members of the church and even Pope, and in this instance, it's like a 9 or a 10-year-old child is the Pope, and they want to install this long-lost princess back on the throne. So they have to find her. They do find her. They find this street urchin, this street rat, and she has the birthmarks. She's about the right age, and they're pretty positive, based on all these things, that they found the right person, that she is the long-lost princess. They then bring in Brother Diaz, who we are introduced to at the very start of the novel, and he is the sort of cardinal who is going to have to look after this entire gang of what we call devils, which is, like vampires, people with different powers, that kind of thing. And they're all going to go on a mission. They get sent on missions, and their mission is to install the new princess on the throne. However, the princess, she has lots of family members. I think like 4 cousins who all have a right to the throne as well, and on their journey of trying to get the princess to where she needs to be and install her on the throne, they're going to have to deal with all these family members who are out for her blood and out for power. And that's it. That's what this novel is. So I suppose let's talk about the characters who go on this journey. And let's just get this out of the way. I love them all. Like, I genuinely loved all of these characters. They all made me laugh. They were all really, really unique. Their personalities were just great. The dialogue in this is just so good, as it always is. I know. I'll be intrigued. I know a lot of people might be put off by this one because of its simplicity. It is just like a little adventure story with Joe Abercrombie's great kind of like writing and detail of battles, but it hasn't got like the kind of like the politics within this one. It's a little bit more simplified. So I would, I'd understand if people were not as impressed with this one. But anyway, the characters. So, of course, we've got Brother Diaz, who is a cardinal. I believe he's a cardinal. I could be getting that completely wrong. Priest? I don't know. He's a member of the church. So he's the fish out of water character. We're seeing the sort of world through his eyes and learning the world through his eyes. And, but he's put in charge of sort of being in control of this group, this gang, who are going to kind of get the princess on the throne. Next up, we have Jacob, who is... He's immortal. He cannot die. He was cursed hundreds and hundreds of years ago. He is a knight, but he cannot die. And his journey is just, he's very sort of like stoic. He is a leader, but he's been alive so long that he's a little bit bitter. And, just his battle scenes where he's getting stabbed up and chopped up, but obviously he can't die, and it surprises everybody he's in a fight with. I love Jacob, and I won't say much more for spoilers, but he goes on a really cool journey in this one. Next up, we have Viga, who is a werewolf. She is a Viking werewolf, and she is blunt to the point and absolutely loves sex. That's her in a nutshell. And when she turns into the wolf, just hell breaks loose. She absolutely destroys everything around her. She is very, very funny in the way that she sees the world and her interactions with all the other characters. Just loved Viga. Next up, we have Sunny, who is an elf. And in this world, the world of the devils, elves are the worst. They are the worst. Elves are hated more than anything. But she is an elf who works with this gang, so very, very small. And she can hold her breath and go invisible. So over time, she's learned to hold her breath for longer and longer, and she can be invisible for up to 10 minutes at a time. But that's her sort of power. And I feel like we've got so much further to go in novels that may come after this with sort of her backstory and where she's come from. Because, to end up where she's ended up with how much everyone seems to hate elves, I feel like, we've got a long way to go with her. But really cool, and really cool sort of like her relationship dynamics with members of the group and how that builds. Great stuff. Next up, we have Baptiste, a pirate. And her back and forth with another character is just hilarious as it builds throughout. But she just throws herself into everything. And Baptiste has sort of been everywhere and done everything. Everywhere she seems to go, she seems to know people, people know her, and much to the surprise of the rest of the gang, they didn't realise sort of like how well liked she might be, or how well travelled she is, and yeah, she's great. Future editing Andy here, and unfortunately everybody, my video and audio got all corrupted and a little bit squiffy, and I tried really hard to save it, but I couldn't. I don't know what happened. Technology, eh? So I'm going to have to do the next 3 characters this way, because there's no way that I can be bothered to go back and film it all. So one character that I've already spoke about a little bit is Princess Alex, the street urchin who's in a lot of debt at the start of the novel with different gangs, and basically she, like Brother Diaz, is another fish out of water. She's being introduced to everything, the sort of royalty aspects, her family, the gang, and we're seeing the world through her eyes. Next up we have Balthazar, who is a kind of self-proclaimed magician. Balthazar is a sort of necromancer. He can raise the dead, and he has a flair for the dramatic, but he also has this sort of like desperate need for freedom. And at the start of the novel, the entire gang is bound by this sort of like curse by the Pope. That means they have to continue on their journey. They have to, you know, save the princess and get her on the throne, or die trying. And if they try to do anything but that, they're like violently ill. And what's quite hilarious is Balthazar just spends pretty much the whole novel trying everything he can to break this curse that's been put upon him. And finally, we have Baron Rickard, who is a vampire. He has this charm to him, but he's also very detached. We often find him observing all the group's antics from afar, and much to his amusement. But he has these sort of powers. You know, he's a vampire, all the typical vampire things, but something that comes in really handy in this novel is his ability to sort of like hypnotize, charm, and get people to do what he wants. So there you go, that's the characters. Apologies that we had to finish it off this way, but, you know, technology breaking down on you, it happens all the time. So what did I like, and what didn't I like? What I liked, as always, Joe Abercrombie. So of course, it's the dark humour and the sharp dialogue. Boom. Dialogue is absolutely fantastic, as always. It's funny, it's dark, I was laughing my ass off constantly. It builds, it just flows so wonderfully. It is so easy to devour. Mwah. I really enjoyed that this novel is very fast-paced and action-packed. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. We're in one place, one new adventure. The characters all splinter off and go off on their own little adventures. It's got everything. If you are up for a novel that's just a fun adventure, that's a little bit dark with good humour, my God, this is a novel for you. And I've already talked about this enough, so I'll keep this quick, but of course, I loved all of the characters. And the next thing I really liked is the kind of inventive world building. I don't think Joe Abercrombie's done it with novels before, a kind of blending of our history, with these sort of fantasy elements in a world that feels very much like our world. Yeah, I loved it for that. And finally, I just really enjoyed the story. A narrative at play. It's very, very simple. It is really, really simple, and you will have read it 1,000 times before. But in Joe Abercrombie's hands, it's just, yeah, he does that type of story to the best of its ability, and I loved it for it. What didn't I like? So it's not many things, but it is some things that I noticed, and I wouldn't be doing... Oh, this isn't my job. I wouldn't be being honest if I didn't say them. So, yeah, some of the plot elements, some of the side sort of plots or the things that happen, as much as I enjoyed them all and the pacing is fast, they are a little repetitive. The next thing is, as much as I enjoyed the world building in this novel, I do think that element could have been pushed a little bit further. It is very character-focused, character-centric, and we get enough for us to understand the world, and I enjoy that blending of sort of like our history with this fantasy world, but still there are things that I have questions about that just aren't answered because it's not important to narrative, characters or plot, but I felt myself wanting a little bit more. And my final dislike, and this was my big one, this is the one that's really pulling this novel down, is the antagonists. I just didn't have anywhere near enough depth or insight into them and their motivations. Towards the end, you get a little bit with one person, but I don't know, like, I just found myself being like, oh, and another family member's come along, and I really wanted to feel a kind of unique connection to each antagonist as they're coming along and as the novel's building, and to understand why their rightful place is on the throne, understand why this means so much to them in order to really cause that tension and that drama, but they were all paper thin. And it properly, yeah, I was like, oh, come on. So yeah, that was my biggest negative. So my final thoughts are, even though I do have some negatives that do bring this novel down, it is just so much fun. Tons Tons of fun, everybody. Yeah, it's just got adventure. It's got really great characters. It's got fantastic dialogue. So I think I'm ending up on like a 4 stars out of 5. This novel is excellent. And the final novel for my first book fantasy is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. All I can say before I start is this book is epic. It goes, my lord, get ready for some characters. Get ready for a lot. It is just like bam, 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 bam. I was like, to start off with, I properly shat my pants. I was like, this is mental. But you soon get on the flow with it. But yeah, it is a lot, I found. But yeah, and it's all based around the Han Dynasty, a sort of like kind of retelling, reimagining sort of that story, I think, from what I can read and see, you know? But in this book, we are chronicling the rise and fall of 2 best friends who become rivals. We have Kunigaru, which, again, I'm going to mispronounce these names. Don't hate me too much. But Kunigaru, who's like kind of like a trickster, like worked the streets, used his like sort of wit and charm and cunning to sort of slowly rise to power. Next up, we have Matazundu, who is kind of a noble warrior who is driven by kind of honour and tradition. And I'm not going to go too much more into narrative than that. And I know that's basically nothing. I've given you nothing. But here's the thing. This story is so rich and so dense and so complex that I just wouldn't know where to start. We get a great, in the second half, we get this introduction sort of female character, and that is just great. Like, I loved her sort of backstory. And what I wanted to talk about before I go on to my likes and dislikes is that you can tell that Ken Liu was really good at short stories. Before writing this series of books, because I think he did, I don't know what the book's called, all I can remember is on the cover, I think it's got like a paper tiger, the paper menagerie it might be called, I don't know, someone can help me out in the comments, but if you like Google like best book of short stories ever written, it's always on that list. It is always on that list, and some people consider it to be the best book of short stories ever written. I mean, that's quite a claim, but you know, it is really well regarded. And you can just tell that because in this novel we go on these little side tangents, these little backstories with these different characters, and they feel like these miniature short stories, but they don't drag on for ages. They are quite sharp, but at the same time they're really creative, they're really interesting, they're detailed in a way in which he's not using a lot, but everything feels well thought through. I don't know, I was just really digging the style of this one. Especially those sort of elements when we get these character backstories and how it builds and how it jumps around. I thought it was really smart. Complicated. I did a couple of times have to be like, wait, I think I'm gonna have to go back, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, so if that sort of style sounds like it might be your thing, then this could be a novel for you. Right, so let's jump straight into what did I like and what didn't I like. What I liked. Yeah, the novel is just like packed with this kind of really rich but also at the same time immersive world building. It is a big book, and by like the midway point you are so in. I really love the themes that it's exploring, like loyalty, friendship, honour, power, all of these things, and it takes its time to get there, and it thoroughly explores these ideas. And by the time you get to this sort of end point, there are also, by the way, there are gods in this. There are gods in this novel who sort of are playing around with the mortals. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but they exist. That's the sort of fantasy part. But yeah, it's just... I've lost where I was. Oh, shit. No, I can't remember. That's right, I've got it back. The themes. Yeah, I just feel like it deals with the themes really well in a really smart and kind of mature way that feels earned as we progress. So, yeah, great job. I also thought it had a really interesting way of how it's blending this sort of Eastern and Western sort of storytelling style together. Yeah, really smart and really worked. Now, I'm not normally a fan of this one. It's the reason I didn't like one of Joe Abercrombie's novels, but it is very detailed in its political and sort of military strategies and kind of, yeah, the politics at play between different families, friends, different military bases, but also the kind of strategies put in place by different generals, different captains in order to sort of like take land, take ownership, conquer, all of that kind of stuff. It goes into great detail. And I am not normally a fan of that. I'm not normally like, I like it, but I don't like it to be so detailed that that's what the novel is. And at times, that is definitely what this novel becomes. But for some reason, I was so in the way the narrative built and the way the plot sort of threw me into it that by the time we get to those really, really dense areas of it, I didn't mind it. I also thought that the prose was just lovely. It just flowed really, really well all the way throughout, and yeah, you can just really sink your teeth into it. And finally, and I should have put this in my sort of themes area really, but I just thought it was really thought-provoking, its ideas around sort of like governing and leadership and sort of ruling, and how it explores those through this sort of friendship and through the kind of like the needs of the people and the wants of the people. I really enjoyed it for that. Yeah, really good. What didn't I like? Of course, no novel is perfect, and this does have a lot of issues. It also has a lot of things that I didn't mind, but I'm going to mention them anyway, because these could be things that really put you off reading it. This novel takes its time. The pacing is slow. And for me, I did feel that at times. Never enough to sort of damage my enjoyment, but I did feel the pace of it at times. The next thing I didn't like is it is a large book, and we spend a lot of time on strategy and military sort of like maneuvering, and that is at the cost of some character arcs, some characters we're introduced to, just lacking any depth whatsoever. And that leads me on to my next and the largest sort of negative I have is I felt no emotional connection to any of these characters whatsoever, and I had spent so much time with them. It's written in such a distanced way, in such a sort of like a story being told, that I was able to sort of emotionally engage with the narrative at play. I was able to kind of like be like, oh, this is really interesting and I'm enjoying this story. But as far as kind of like really caring and having a sort of emotional connection to any of the characters, I had zero, like nothing whatsoever. I was just like reading through it. Yeah, and that's the big one for me. That's the one where I was a bit like, and I don't think this novel isn't trying to do that. I don't think Ken Liu set out to make that kind of novel, nor did Ken Liu want to explore those things with the characters he's talking about. I think the novel is deliberately distancing us so that we get an idea of the overall picture. We get an idea of all of the different elements at play and how they've led, and a sort of chain of events has led to things happening. And in order to do that, you do need to step back. So I do understand it. It's just my personal taste. I'd like just a little bit more of an emotional connection. And my final negative, and that's not, I don't know, it's not negative from me, but I want you to be aware that it is dense, it is slow at times, and it takes real patience and resilience from the reader to keep going, to get as much as they can get from this novel. Out of all the novels I've talked about, this is the hardest one, I think, to really get into. But in my eyes, I think it's the strongest of all three. So I really enjoyed this one, but because of that lack of sort of emotional connection to the characters, I'm ending up with, I think I'm going to go like 4 to 4.5 stars. I thought this was excellent. In some elements, I thought it was fantastic, but overall, I think it's still a 4-star. It still sits very firmly in the excellent category. So there you go, that's my first book, fantasy. That's 3 books. And technically, as I said, it's not really, it's 2, isn't it? Because only the Jade series, only Jade City and Grace of Kings are completed, in which all novels have been written. So if I wanted to pick Joe Abercrombie as the one I'm going to continue, which of course I will, I'll be waiting quite a few years. So overall, if I was to look at each 3 of these novels and say which one is the one that I most want to continue reading, I think I'm going to go with Grace of Kings, just because it was a challenge, just because it was hard, and I quite enjoyed that. I found myself actually being like, oh no, I'm really having to work at this one, but like I'm getting equally rewarded for my effort as well. It doesn't feel like there's no sort of payoff for how much effort I'm putting in. So yeah, and the good news is there's 3 other books, there's 4 books in total, so yeah, I can just keep cracking on, and I think the second one is meant to be an absolute hit. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. Right, there you go, everyone. This was a long one. I hate doing videos like this. I hate not having time to slowly just film a video a week. I do not like doing multiple book review videos. They take so long. They're so boring to edit, and it is not what I do the YouTube thing for. I like to just read a book and then talk about that one book. These take so long to do. And I don't do them very well. But anyway, let me know if you have read any of the books that I've talked about today. And also maybe let me know if there's any other sort of first books in sort of fantasy series where you're like, the first book is amazing and so makes you want to keep reading. Yeah. But I think that's it. I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you are well and you're enjoying whatever you might be reading. And I'll see you on the next one.